to welcome Shannon, Messenger.
Is this working? Okay. Welcome to St. Louis. Oh, you just push it up. The little thing. Watch. This others can't screw in a light bulb either. Okay, here you go.
Technology hates me, and I'm not great with it, so yeah, the feeling's mutual.
So welcome to St. Louis. You haven't been here since 2018.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. Although, you know, the world kind of shut down for a little while in there, so it wasn't completely just that. And then I had babies, so you know.
Do you have any memories of your time here last time?
I do actually. I remember I did. I was with Kat Zhang, and she was lovely, and that's mostly what I remember is that she was just absolutely lovely. And it was cold. I mean, I'm from Southern California, so this white stuff on the ground, what is that? Why is it so slippery?
Let's see, how many of you are actually from St. Louis? Raise your hand. Okay, and how many of you came from somewhere not St. Louis to see Shannon? Yeah, that's still a lot of people.
See, I told you there would be so, because someone's like, I do events here all the time. They're probably like, oh no, it's Soman again. And I'm like, there's gonna be people in the audience that are here for the first time or haven't been here in a while.
I'm really excited to talk to you because I think we both write for a very specific audience that I think is increasingly underserved, which is very sophisticated, extremely smart middle schoolers who want big books.
Yes, that is a description of this crowd. Or I think the other term they like to use, which is not my favorite, is tween readers. You know.
How do you see your audience? Because I think, you know, if you had to describe who you think the Keeper of the Lost Cities reader is at this point in the journey, how would you describe them?
It's funny because my goal was to kind of write the book that 12-year-old me would have just gone nuts for. You know, one of the very few things that I used to get consistently in trouble for was sneaking out of bed to read by my nightlight because I just wanted to see what was going to happen next, and bedtime was just messing with that plan. And so I wanted to write the book that would have made me take that risk because my dad was so good at catching me. He would throw open the door, I caught you again, you know. So I not every book was worth the risk, but some were. And so that was my goal, was to write the book that 12-year-old me would have done that for. And so I guess I was hoping there were a lot of 12-year-old Shannons out there. It seems to be that there are. I can't decide if it's a good thing or perhaps a sign of that we are all doomed. Because the idea of a lot of 12-year-old me's is actually kind of terrifying in some ways. But nonetheless.
Was there a book growing up that like gave you the confidence to believe that like big, long form, complex, middle grade was, you know, a genre that could flourish?
Honestly, it was more the fact that it didn't really exist. I'm old, and I was before, you know, the book that shall not be named that kind of changed the children's world. Before that, there really wasn't a lot of focus in publishing on new children's books. It was a lot more of like, well, we've got the classics, everyone will just read the classics. And so, I mean, I enjoyed The Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe. You know, I like that idea of going through a closet into a magical world. But I couldn't really find the kind of stories that I wanted. When I did, there just weren't enough of them. They went very, very quickly. And so again, that was kind of why I wanted to write the book that like 12-year-old me wishes I had. You all don't know how lucky you are. There are so many more books now and so many great books. But I was also a kid, we grew up without much money, and the nearest library was 30 minutes away. And so going to the library was rare, and when we went, I wanted to get the thickest book that I could. And so I was always looking for those. But it wasn't like that I necessarily sat down and was like, oh, I want to write a thick book. It was more just like, I want to write a big story, because that was what I loved. I loved a story where I really went on a journey, not just like on one quick little adventure. I wanted to really go with the characters. And so that was the story I was drawn to, and it just kept getting thicker and thicker. Ironically, Keeper started as a short story.
Tell us about that. Tell us about that. How did it, I'm sort of interested in the idea of how it starts from a normal sized first book and then keeps expanding, which, you know, I went through with School for Evil, but in your case, it's, you know, more than 10 books. So how do you keep it in your head? Like, how do you track everything, you know?
So it started as a short story. I was working on a completely different book that I realized I had no plot for. I just had a cool concept and no plot. I was stuck. And one of the things that I had been taught in my writing classes in college was to get to know your side characters. Because a lot of times they might have more to give. So if you're feeling like you don't have enough to your story, or you know, if you feel like you have no plot, maybe if you get to know your side characters, you will find something. And so I had created the elves for that world. I created Fitz just as this kind of side character that would come in quickly for a couple of scenes. And so I thought, well, he's kind of cool. That's kind of a cool little elfy guy. Maybe I should get to know him. And so I, for some reason, decided that in the story I was going to write that he would meet a little girl and realize that she was an elf and didn't know it. And that was my brilliant ending to my short story, was him telling her, hey, you're an elf. And she's like, what? The end. Great short fiction, right? Yeah, I learned pretty quick that I am terrible at short stories. But I just kept thinking about that little girl, and I was just like, there's a story here. Why didn't she know what she was? And what world does she belong to? What are the, you know, I hadn't really put thought into like what the elves' world was, and the more I kept thinking about it, the more I was just like, this is a book. And then I realized, no, this is more than a book. This is a lot of books. And at that point I was like, this is the very first book I've ever written. I probably shouldn't start with a 10-book series because I don't know what I'm doing.
Was that in your head?
I knew in my head, because what I realized as I was learning about this little girl and everything and trying to figure out why she was hidden away, I realized that it was because there was a fundamental problem with her world. That it wasn't just a villain that had risen up and that needed to be taken down, that it was that there were fundamental problems with this world that she belonged to, and that that's not something that can be fixed in like a 3-book arc or a 5-book arc. Like we're looking at a huge story. And I remember when I signed on with my agent and we were putting it all together to be shopped, I was just like, yeah, I see this as being like 10 books or more. And she was just like, well, that's great. But you're a debut author. You're not the daughter of any celebrities or anything like that. So you are not going to get a 10-book deal, just so you know. So let's try to figure out a way that we can make this into like a 3-book arc and write synopses so that maybe we can get you a 3-book deal. And what I realized was that I had all of these different villains and that I could kind of save them. And so that's kind of why the story has expanded, is because I knew all of those villains from the very beginning, even these ones, and not just villains, but new characters and things like, you know, Tam and Lynn, who we meet in book 4. I knew them from the beginning. I just knew I needed to wait to bring them in until a certain point in the story. The character that we meet at the very end of book 9, that is now the title of book 10, Elysian, I knew about her all along too. I just had to wait for the right point in the story.
Do you keep track of everything? Do you have this like master codex? Like, do you have like this big like file room of everything? Like, how do you keep track of everything? I wish.
I wish. Naive Shannon in 2008, when I started this process, was like, I've got a good memory. I'm gonna remember all of this stuff. Note taking is just a way of stalling writing. Like, let's just go. Let's just do this. I had a couple of journals that I had like hastily scribbled things in that are now the only way I can find anything in there is flipping through the entire journal and trying to make sense of my chicken scratch. Yeah, if I had been smart, and that's one of the pieces of advice that I always give new writers that are embarking on, especially if they think they have a big story, I'm like, oh, take really good notes, do them on your computer so you can keyword search them, like try to have some organization here. Yeah. I hate it though. Yeah.
I'm similar though. I did school for 12 years. I don't have one note anywhere. Like it just, but I wonder if that's just a symptom of how we sort of process creatively, like that you sort of follow the story where it goes as opposed to like controlling it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I'm not a complete pantser, but I'm more of, I call it like connecting the dots. So I know kind of like these big moments that are coming, but I don't know exactly how I'm getting there. I don't know exactly what order I'm going to get to all of those things. And part of that was because in writing school, we also were taught that your first ideas are rarely your best ideas. And so I tend to leave room for the fact that just because I have an idea right now doesn't mean it's my best idea, and I don't want to lock myself into, but this was the idea that I had, and now, because something better might come along that's still consistent with everything that I'm doing. And so it's been trying to like give myself that room to have the creativity hit, to have it, you know, something better than what I was originally planning, and piece that in.
Have you had an oops moment though? I remember, I think I got a call from my editor once, it was on book 5, and she was like, this character that you wrote a lovely chapter about is dead. Have you had that moment?
Yes, it's more so, as I got later into the series, Simon & Schuster was like, you really should start outlining. And I do not know how to outline. In fact, when I outline, I turn the book boring. Something about when I'm trying to decide what scenes that I'm putting into the super logical outline and everything is flowing, when I actually write that following my outline, it is the most boring book that has ever been written, ever. And so when they were just like, you know, you're on book B, and like you're starting to wrap things up, and it would probably be better if we started outlining these things before we go, and I'm just like, great, but I don't know how to do that. And my editor had just switched houses, and so they said, we're bringing in another editor who that is her strong suit, and we're going to, you know, you can meet her, make sure you like her, but we think, well, like, we've kind of chosen her for you because you need help, Shannon. And so what's been great is she and I do weekly Zooms where we brainstorm, and we're kind of like figuring out my little stepping stones each way. But there have been times where I come into that brainstorming session and I'm like, I've got this great idea. And she's like, wait, hold on, let me fact check something. And she looks it up and she's like, that won't work. Like, oh, okay, so this is why we're outlining, this is why we're doing this, yeah.
It's good, you almost have your own little personal elf who's kind of like managing the world for you,
yeah.
And you don't feel like you're so constrained by having to keep track of all the details.
It's very nice. She's basically my second brain, so that I can just kind of focus on the things that my brain is good at, and she can kind of keep track of all those things I'm bad at.
You know what I did in book 6, and tell me what you think of this, is I felt like the kids knew the books better than I did, so I crowdsourced a group of them to be like the people who got to read it early and tell me if I was messing anything up. Because I felt like if they were okay with it, you know, have you ever like previewed anything for like super fans?
I haven't previewed anything just because I am terrified of spoilers leaking, but I used to, back in the days when social media was a bit friendlier of a place. I used to like kind of casually throw things out there like, does anyone remember what I said about this? And you know, I hear that there's a pretty exhaustive and extensive wiki for Keeper of the Lost Cities. I try to stay away from there because I feel like there's probably also forums that talk about me, and that's probably not a great place for me to go. But I hear there's a pretty extensive wiki, and I know that there have been certain times where when I'm Googling things, it's like, this is answered over at the Keeper of the Lost Cities wiki. So I know that there are readers out there who are keeping track of me, but like one of my biggest oopsies is actually in book 1 of all things. And it was one of those things where this is why there are copy editors, Shannon. And so what happened was we had finished the book, copy edited everything, and I was writing book 2, and I got to this moment where I have a character who always refers to people by their last names. And I could not remember this character's last name. So I went through the little bit of notes that I had, and I found that I had written down that her last name was a certain thing. And I went and did a keyword. I'm like, that doesn't sound familiar to me though, that's so weird. So I did a keyword search and it didn't pop up. So I'm like, oh, I didn't give her a last name. And then I thought, oh, I wonder if that's gonna be weird that I didn't give her a last name. So I emailed my editor, I'm like, I know we're sort of at text lock, but could we still work in a last name for this character, or is that a no-no? And she's like, let me check. And she got back to me, she's like, we can, but you have to like find a very strategic spot where it's not gonna mess with the formatting or anything like that. So we found this spot where it was for parents. I gave them Vika and Timken Logner was the new name that I came up with, and we put it in, the book goes to print, I write the book, the book 2, it goes to copy edits, and it comes back with this big red note from the copy editor saying, what is Logner? This character's last name is Hex. And I'm just like, what? And then I did a keyword search for that, and it was in the book, and so I gave that character 2 last names, and I didn't even, and by then it was printed, it was done. I had some people who were like, well, do you want it to be that her parents have a different last name than her, and we like lean into it, and I was just like, I feel like that will get way too messy. Let's just take it out of the next few printings and hope that no one notices, but somehow, somewhere along the way, it ended up back in the printings again, and then some of the foreign editions translated it, and so, yeah, Stina Hex is also sometimes Stina Logner. It's entirely my fault.
This is good. I feel like that's how you can really tell a super fan if they come up to you and they're like, ask you about this?
Yes, they're like, so how come Stina's parents are Logner and Stina is no, it's just because yeah.
So before we talk about the graphic novels, are you do you see the end game for the whole world? Are you looking to move on to another world? Like, how are you seeing Keeper's World in terms of your potential future?
So if you're asking about book 10, it is the bane of my existence. It is really, really hard, and that is why it's not out yet, because writing it is really, really hard, and I now have so much more sympathy for George R.R. Martin. I will never make fun of him again. Because late books in the series are really, really hard. So, I mean, obviously, the problem in the world has not changed. Like that has stayed consistent, so a lot of my plans are still there. But what's been really tricky is that I feel like the whole course of the series I've been raising questions, I've been planting mysteries, and not all of those mysteries tie together as neatly as I would like. And especially as the stakes get higher, it gets really hard to be like, hey, meanwhile, I realize that like these characters are in dire straits and like almost dying, and the villains are doing all these scary things, but we need to pause here so that I can have a scene where we reveal this thing that you've all been wondering about for a lot of the books, and so let's just pretend that none of that other stuff is going on. And so I got really good as the series went on of just being like, all right, we'll just do that in the next book. Like, it doesn't fit in this one, but we'll do that in the next book. And I'm running out of books. And I owe you answers. And so that's the biggest thing, is how to not have it feel like, wait, why are we stopping to have these reveals and these scenes happen when there's these huge plot things that are also happening, and have it all feel coherent and yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. That is my endless struggle of just why, Shannon, why?
Do you want readers to know that there's a certain book that's going to be the last one?
I do. I know when we announced book 10, the headline was "One Final Keeper of the Lost Cities book." So I would really like book 10 to be the end, so that I don't have to like eat a bunch of crow. But I will say, so these later books, I have been starting each of them with this list of things I have not revealed, and each time I try to check off as many of them as I can. And so here I am working on book 10, and it's a pretty long list still. So I'm trying my best to work it all in. But there is I'm still writing it, so I don't know yet, but there is a chance that I might realize that the only way to give everyone the answers that they need would be to add one more book. I hope, because it's looking possible. We're not there yet. I'm still in deep denial, because I keep thinking about that AP headline of "One Final Keeper of the Lost Cities book," and being like, one final-ish?
The third book in the School for Evil is called The Last Ever After.
This is true.
We said it was the end.
I've been curious about that, actually. Is that because you?
We said it was the end. I was going to move on to another series, and then you have other big ideas and then you're just like, okay, like we're just going to keep going. So I think at the end of the day, I think it's what readers want more than what you want.
I mean, I certainly I would never want to drag out this series, because I know some readers who are dying for the answers, and they're like, she's just dragging this out so she can just keep selling books, and it's like, oh, believe me, I would love to move on to something easier. Did you find this? I'm guessing it's not just me, or I'm hoping it's not just me, that the later books in the series so much harder than the first books in the series.
100%. I think it's because, and tell me if this resonates with you, it's the idea of you have all your pieces that you're trying to solve in your list of questions, and so there's so much machinery in getting people to the right place for the set pieces and showdowns. It's a lot like if you watch, the adults watch the later Game of Thrones seasons, it's like 8 episodes to just get everyone to the place. So
yeah, your cast keeps
it's
getting
the
bigger.
movie, yeah, it's the moving pieces around. You struggle with the like, how do I get everyone there?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
because I'll admit, naive me really thought that it was going to get easier with each book. Like, I really thought by book 10, it would kind of be like the equivalent of like author Mad Libs, you know, like the sentences where you just pop in a character's name and we're good to go, this is all set. I mean, because the world exists, the plot is going, the characters, all that work is done. You're just riding through it, but no, it gets exponentially harder with each book. It's also because you're trying to top yourself. Because you want them to be that the next book is their new favorite one in the series. You don't really want them reading the new one book and then being like, but I still like the last one better. You know, you really want, so you're competing with yourself. You're like, I threw everything I had into the last book, and now somehow I have to find more to top that. It's, yeah.
You also have the added problem in your case, because you're 10 books in, of this amazingly sophisticated group of kids who are learning your style, your characters, your world.
They're writing fan fiction
They're
called like
writing
What Should Have Happened.
fan fiction.
Oh yeah, I get lots of Google alerts for stuff like that.
So
Yeah.
it's almost like you have this like collective alien organism that's like learning your brain. You know what I mean? I think it's you're like 13 years in. Like, I think the challenge must be enormous with each of the books.
It's definitely a lot harder. So, but again, it's also just I have these big reveals that I want, and I know readers are wanting. You know, anytime we submit, we allow readers to submit questions, it's always the same. Like, when are you going to tell us this? When are you going to tell us this? When are you going to tell us this? I'm like, I want to. I'm getting there. I promise. Like, there's reasons why it hasn't come out yet, but it's going to come out before the end because I want readers. I mean, I feel like you want to leave a few little tiny things, but for the most part, like the big stuff, I owe that to my readers before we call it the end. So that's, yeah, I'm in series purgatory right now. Writing book 10 and going, I love my job, I love my job, I love my job, I love my job, I love my job.
We'll get to the graphic novel in a second. I want to ask you also about a lot of, kids here are reading your books, and then when they're done with the book, have the book hangover, being miserable because they're waiting for the next one. And, I just remember a lot of times parents and these kind of kids will come up and be like, what do I read next? Because there's actually, I think, a pretty limited selection of these really like big, series. I'm thinking of, I only think there's like 4 or 5 of us, right?
Yeah.
Like Percy Jackson, Land of Stories, Keeper, School, maybe Nevermore. What else do you think?
I mean, there's some that are a little bit like, there's one, they might actually be out in the audience. There's Sir Callie and the Champions of Hellstead by Esme Smith Sykes. I know they were planning to come, but I don't know if they were able to make it. But those ones are on the thicker side, and they're great, but they're not quite as thick as ours are. They've saved themselves some pain by
But I think it's funny because I don't know if we're like a dying breed or whether like I can't figure it out. Like,
well, have you had, because I know that I've had this where I've been at events, at festivals with other authors, and there's inevitably one middle grade author who writes like, the 20 or 30,000 word books, and they see my stack of books on the table and they're just like, but why? like, you're not getting paid by the word, Shannon. Why? Why are you doing this? And I'm just like, because the story needs it. But yeah.
Also because there's an audience that is desperate for big story that they can just immerse themselves into and just don't want to be on TikTok all day, So I think there's something to be said for, So how do you when you go into a school and you see the brother, one of your readers, who just is like, ugh, book, how do you approach that kind of kid who might feel like your series just looks beyond them? Because I feel like that's another challenge we're facing now, post, Potter, when that was part of the culture of big books, and now we have to get people, used to.
I mean, I think some of that is also why, like, I wanted a graphic novel adaptation. I'll admit, selfishly, I just author bucket list. I started as an art major in college. I gave up because I could never draw what was in my head as well as what I imagined. Like, I always felt like what came out on the paper was disappointing. So to have it be now where someone has taken all of that stuff that's in my head and drawn it for me is just like, this is so cool. And the book just came out even more beautiful than I ever imagined. I can't wait for you guys to be able to really bask in all of that. But what's great about graphic novels is that they are a little bit more of that reluctant reader friendly, and I think that that's a great way. I think anything that gets kids reading is important. But I usually will also try to say, like, to the kid that's staring at my thick book, I'm like, I realize it seems like I'm just shamelessly pushing my own book at you, you know, and I promise I'm not. It's more just, the chapters are really short, they all end on kind of, so just give it a try. Just read like 1 or 2 chapters and see if it interests you. And I think that that stands for any book, really. Like, whether it's thick or thin, just open it up and give it a try. And it's absolutely okay if when you pick it up and give it a try, you're just like, not for me. I mean, I have that now still as a grown-up. I'll pick up a book and everyone loves it, and I'm like, yay, I can't wait to read the thing that everyone loves. And I'm just like, why don't I love this? I don't love this. It's okay, books are subjective, but give it a try. And I think a lot of times I have actually heard, and I'm sure you have too, that my books ended up being kind of that book that opened their kids' eyes to reading and made them fall in love with it. Because it really is, once you get the right book in the right hand of the right kid, it changes things. And so just being willing to open it up, even if it's thick, even if it looks daunting, and then there's a sense of pride if you do tackle that big, thick book and you're not usually a reader and you're just like, look at how thick this is, I did 480 pages and I read them all, you know, there's a sense of like accomplishment there.
Yeah, and also I think, especially for, you know, your audience now and today, you know, because School for Evil's been done for 5 years, you're still producing these big, you know, these big books for everybody. I feel like your audience is so thankful that this is still happening. You know what I mean? Like, you're still giving these big, sophisticated books, and this particular audience.
Until they get to my cliffhanger, then they're not so happy with me.
I mean, the other thing about a cliffhanger,
Because that's what these big series rely on.
is, do you feel stressed when you leave it there?
Because you know that the anger that they have is carrying over until they begin the next
I mean, there's a reason why I do less events now, so. I'm a little worried about books being thrown at my head. No, it's, honestly, I don't do the cliffhangers to be evil, that's just a bonus. It really is just like, this is one long story. There's nothing episodic about Keeper. I wish there was. It would make my life much easier if I could have that, like, okay, so each book is 1 year of Sophie's life, and so we will come to the close of her life. And it doesn't work that way. This is an ongoing story. And so what I try to aim for is what I call the game changer moment. So I think of my endings less as cliffhangers and more as game changers. I try to have it be that we start each book with like one big thing that they're all dealing with, and we spend that book dealing with that thing, and we get some answers, we get some resolution, and then right when we're getting to that point of like, okay, now what? Something comes in, and we're like, what does that mean? And that's the game changer, and that's where we stop. And the reason I do that is so that when I jump into the next book, I can jump right in, and I don't have to waste all like 100 pages catching everyone up, getting the story started. The story's ready to go. We're there. We're just in. And then, you know, I get lots of angry emails from readers in the meantime, like, how can you leave us there? Sorry. Not sorry, but sorry.
And my last question about the actual books, which is, you know, in my case, because it's a fairy tale world, there's a heavy amount of romance, right? These kids are getting older, they're getting married, even though it's a tweet book, like there's a lot happening. How do you deal with the fact that, you know, the books are getting bigger, kids are growing up, and the romantic element without it turning into like full YA?
For me, it's just really kind of trusting the characters. Like, that's kind of how I decide all of that stuff is just what are, I'm staying authentic to them, you know. Now, in my case, a lot of my books don't span a great amount of time. A lot of them. That's been one of the things that's actually been really tricky about the series, is that my kids are super powerful, and there's not a lot that limits them from going after something. So it's like if they get a clue, they're gonna just lightly to go follow that. Like they're not stuck at school, they're not limited by certain things. They don't have to wait till the Christmas holidays before they can finally go look into something. They're just going, and so a lot of my books have ended up being only like 2 or 3 months of Sophie's life, and so it was like that bought me a lot more time, because she was. I think at one point I remember saying to my editor, like, we need to have Sophie change grade levels. Like I feel like Sophie's been in grade level 3 for like 6 books. Like she needs to move on to another grade level, and so that has helped. But it's more just, again, it's like staying authentic to where Sophie's at, like what she's ready for, what kinds of things, there was, we did kind of the kiss that was very unromantic, where she realized that's not a romantic relationship, this is just my friend. We did that one, and then we had, this couple of almost kisses with a different boy that it just wasn't, the timing wasn't quite there. And then, in book 9, she was finally to a place where she was ready, and chapter 42 happened, and it's amazing to me how many readers come through and they want me to sign that chapter. They're like, no, don't sign the front of my book, sign right here, chapter 42. So, clearly my readers were ready for it as well.
I also love that we brought up the main character named Sophie, who approach boys in very different ways.
Yes, your Sophie and my Sophie are very, very different Sophies.
My last question for you, and then I know so many of these readers are going to want you to send their books, is about these graphic novels. How much, now that you've invested so much of your imagination in these books, how much do you let the artist just run and enjoy the interpretation of it, the way you would sort of any kind of visual interpretation of your books? Or how much do you feel you need to micromanage and control it?
It's hard, because I am a bit of a control freak, and I was an art major and all of that, but I've been very lucky. Simon & Schuster has let me art direct my covers. They've let me really be hands-on with all the promotional materials when they've commissioned art and things of that sort. So what I've kind of learned to do is, again, the thing that frustrated me when I was an art major and what made me give up was that I felt like what was in my head wasn't coming out on the page. And I never wanted to do that to an artist. I never want it to be that I'm not letting what's in their head come out on the page, because I'm giving them too many notes, too many things. And so obviously it's like, all right, there's things about this that are like canon that my readers will call out if certain things don't look a certain way, if the aesthetic of things don't match the feel of things, that we have to stay within that. But beyond that, I kind of like to give them a little bit of free rein. So I didn't dictate the outfits. I was just like, if you want me to, and I always say, if it's becoming too much work for you, if you're having to spend all this time searching for outfit ideas and that's getting frustrating, then I can do that. But otherwise, if you want to decide the hairstyles, if you want to decide the outfits, if you want to decide certain details about the room or things like that, by all means, have that so that what is in their head, because that's how you get the real magic from the artist. If you're tying their hands too much and forcing them to try to draw exactly what's in my head, it's not going. And most of the time when I do that, they end up coming up with stuff that's like, wow, that's way cooler than I was imagining. So I tend to just kind of step back and only give feedback if it's like, ooh, that doesn't match the text of the book.
And if you have all these amazing super fans who've read all your books, how do you want them to approach going back and reading these graphic novels? How would you tell them to approach reading?
I mean, I hope that it feels fresh in a certain way. I'm wondering if some of you haven't even read book 1 in a while. But even if you have, one thing that's really interesting about this was that the poor Selena who adapted it, when we first talked about it, I told her, there's a lot of lines that they get highlighted in the Kindle. When you read through, you can see that's been highlighted 1,000 times, and we need to get those lines in. And she was just like, oh yeah, no, I think that's the most important thing, to be really faithful. And so she went through and she copied and pasted so many lines straight from the book. And the funny thing was, when I actually got the art with the text all pasted in, it was like, wow, that line doesn't work in this format. Because graphic novels and novels are different things. And one of the biggest things that's much more absent in the graphic novel is Sophie's inner monologue. Like, it's there a little bit. We get little glimmers of her thoughts, but it's not the same as like really being in her head. And so without that, it changed the way that certain lines fell. It was like, suddenly this doesn't seem like this character is playfully teasing her and she gets that. Now it seems like this character is being mean to her and she's got her feelings hurt by it, and just lots of little things like that. So I ended up going in and basically rewriting probably 75% of the text. So what you're going to see in the graphic novels is, it is the same book, the same emotion behind each scene, the same reveals of each scene happen, but it's all new jokes, a lot of them, a lot of new lines, a lot of new little moments, because we had to be respectful of the fact that this was a new format and we wanted it to really shine, and the best way to do that was to actually throw out all of the things that Selena had painstakingly preserved from the book and have me actually rewrite it. So, which was my managing editor also loved, because she had already copy edited and formatted all of that text that then got thrown out and rewritten and had to be copy edited and formatted again. Yeah.
Now you all can look forward to that massive amount of work finally done. But thank you so much for coming, Shannon. This was such a pleasure. Give it up for Shannon.
The days of doing events, and I don't know if you ever had this happen to you, if you were always much more popular than me, but I did events where nobody came. Like, back in the days where it's just you and a table of unsold books and a bunch of people avoiding eye contact as they try to head to where they actually want to go in the bookstore. And so to have it be that here we are and there's actually people in chairs.
These are Midwesterners. They're going to spend a lot of time talking to you when they get to your table.
This is amazing. Like, I'm so grateful for all of you, and thank you so much for coming out. And actually, I would love to get a crowd shot before where Soman and I come out and we get.
Stephanie's gonna make that happen right now.
You could. Well, we'll do the raffle first, and then yes, we'll get a crowd shot.